Now on to some other themes within Macbeth, and here I'm relating it to a recent TV program set in London called Top Boy, where I think the creators of Top Boy know their Macbeth. So many of the themes are the same or relevant or reinventions of similar ideas. So this is perhaps to show you, if you're into a show like this, if you're into a TV series like this, there's no reason why you won't be into Macbeth, because it's concerned with the same ideas. Power is a massive one. What power does to you, how you get power, and once you've got power, the things you need to do to consolidate your power. Then you find people come after you because they want the power and the money and the security that you've got when you're top dog or you're top boy. The notion of being top boy, i.e. the sort of gangster number one running things, is exactly the same to Macbeth wanting to be the king. It's that same thirst for power and an examination of what are people prepared to do to get power. Also ideas around loyalty and what does that look like once you've got power? Who can you actually trust? And in Top Boy, the protagonist there suddenly, once they attain that power, realise that they can't trust some people they thought they could trust, and they're sort of ever watchful for who's betraying them or who might deceive them or who might be double crossing them, etc. So notions of honour and what it is. What's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? How you treat people, how you treat your family or your best friends or people you grew up with or people that you have grown to rely on and need, and what's right and what's wrong. And again, notions of revenge and friendship central to this one as the main characters fall out and don't trust each other in a way they used to. Exactly the same in Macbeth and Banquo, and the idea that it's that betrayal hurts more when it's the closer someone is to you, the more their betrayal hurts. So loads of the ideas within Top Boy, very, very relevant to Macbeth. Even the sort of setting, summer house on an estate in East London, and where they live, kind of up high. It's on high in this estate, so any threats coming for them have to sort of enter their terrain, their territory, and head up, a bit like a castle on a hill, perhaps, and they have to, get to the seat of power, kind of thing. Loads of other ideas about being one thing on the surface and being something different, not being certain who you trust, being very Machiavellian in how you operate and the kind of things you're prepared to do for power and the lies and the people you're prepared to exploit, etc. Another sort of area of comparison is perhaps mafia movies. So I would imagine most people will have seen some of the famous mafia movies, be they Godfathers or Casino or Goodfellas, Once Upon a Time in America. Take your pick, there's loads. And they're very, very popular and very, very successful. And lots of them have so many of these similar themes running through them in the background. They are concerned with exactly the same things. What will people be prepared to do to gain power? How violent will they be prepared to be? Then once they have power, how do they consolidate it? Does it corrupt them even more? Do they believe in myths about themselves, like Macbeth believes he's the chosen one, kind of thing, because the witches tell him so? Who they trust, who they don't trust, how their family life is affected and sort of deteriorates and becomes problematic because it's impossible to be good and evil in the same breath at the same time, and the sort of the mental strain on trying to be good whilst also your position, your power requires you to do all manner of evil, violent things. And again, all of these, the Godfather will be outwardly respectable, outwardly to be admired, a leader and noble, or certainly within the family setup, trying to be an example or be good, etc. But the reality is the complete opposite. So these are, again, more modern settings for very similar concerns to the concerns of Shakespeare and Macbeth. Why are people violent? Why are people as violent as they are? What extent does power corrupt people? Who do you really trust? And again, that idea of the famous quote from Michael Corleone, "I know it was you, Fredo, you broke my heart." He knew someone has betrayed him within his family, and he knows it's his brother, and it hurts so much more because it's his brother who's betrayed him and tried to arrange his death. These ideas are very similar to Macbeth and Banquo. They by Act 3, Scene 1, the famous scene, they're trying to work each other out. Banquo has worked out that Macbeth murdered to get the crown, but he can't show that he knows, otherwise Macbeth will kill him. Macbeth has worked out that Banquo has worked out that Macbeth murdered to get the crown, but he can't sort of reveal that to Banquo for admitting it. So they're both playing this kind of cagey game of, I can't trust you anymore, but I can't show you I can't trust you, otherwise I'm dead, kind of thing. And the sort of the twisted emotions how they suffer because they were formerly best friends and brothers at arms. And the saddest thing about betrayal, it never comes from an enemy. It comes from someone you love. So there's loads of ideas here as well that will be very consistent with Niccolo Machiavelli, who, if you don't know, is an Italian Renaissance writer, wonderful, wonderful writer, big influence on Shakespeare. His most famous work is The Prince, where he is basically writing a guidebook for a prince on how to keep your power, how to be a prince, what you need to do. And it's gone down in history as being an evil text full of lies and deception and deceit and immoral and all the rest of it. If you ask me, it's just one of the more honest texts ever written at a time when the various other guidebooks from courtiers are being written to princes, and they're sucking up and they're full of sort of sycophantic ideas and lies, really, about how good and noble and chosen by God and loved by everyone you are, O Prince. But Machiavelli's just real and honest and says, look, if you want to keep power, then you need to do this. This is what you need to do. This is how you organise. This is how you deceive your enemies. This is how you buy mercenaries and employ other soldiers to do your work. Again, something that features at the beginning and the end of Macbeth is mercenary soldiers who are just fighting for money. This is how you can fake your own death to put your enemies off the scent if they're closing into you. This is how you divide and conquer, and you divide people up, and they're easier to rule. All sorts of things which he openly says are not particularly nice, but are particularly effective. And okay, you can be a loving, good, noble, very, very honest, super generous king, but you're not going to be a king for long, because someone else is more murderous and ruthless than you and is going to come for you and take your power. That's exactly what happens to Duncan. He seems like, in one sense, a very good king, because he's nice and loving and trusting and says nice things and rocks up to Macbeth's castle saying, it's got a pleasing air, it's got a sweet and pleasant, how lovely it is. Which Shakespeare juxtaposes with the act just before that, or just after that, Macbeth's planning to kill him. Lady Macbeth on top of the battlements, shouting up to the heavens, saying, come, the fatal entrance, the raven crows the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements, we're going to kill him. Duncan rocks up, oh, hello, isn't it lovely? What a nice and pleasant air. So in one sense he seems like a very good king, in another sense he seems like an awful king. And he is a bad king because he gets whacked, he gets taken out. He doesn't trust the wrong people, and he's kind of senile. And Shakespeare's suggesting you need to be sharp and you need to have a bad side about you. You need to be able to sniff out the dangers coming. You can't be this lovable old benign happy king, because you're not going to last very long in this fairly ruthless world. Okay, and I think a lot of these ideas are also relevant to Jekyll and Hyde, which is something you might be studying alongside Macbeth. There's lots of similarities running throughout, principally perhaps the duality, the idea that two can be in one. There's a lot to admire about Macbeth. There's a lot to love about him. He's courageous. He's bold, he's brave, he's supremely capable on the battlefield. He is thoughtful, he's a poet, the way he expresses himself sometimes. His this a dagger speech, now that it is done, if it were done well, it must be done quickly. There's so much poetry expressed in how he sees things. And as he, when he finally goes out, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, he's a deep thinking character. He sees things in beautiful imagery and complexity. And he tries to do the right thing. He's conscious of what the right thing is early on, but various forces overtake him perhaps. Trusts the wrong people. Is intimidated by the wrong people, be that his wife or the witches or his own ego to an extent. So there's so much that is good about him, as well as the regicide, the homicide, the infanticide, all the various isides going on where he's killing, goes on killing sprees. Criminality, this idea of what is criminal and what is not, what is sort of criminal behaviour, but we sort of accept it. We say it's okay, and there's certain murders we justify. Every government or every king justifies their soldiers murdering in their interests. What does the government do? Send soldiers off to war. If you kill enough people, you come back, you get a badge. Oh, you're wonderful. You're amazing. You get a shiny badge, shiny symbol. You get medals. It's still murdering people at the end of the day. It's still one person murdering another person. But, and in a domestic context, you look at them like they're a serial killer. But we justify some elements of criminality. And where does criminal ideas or criminal behaviour lurk in all of us? Where do we decide what is acceptable behaviour and what is not? Whether it's lies or whether it's violence. So both Jekyll and Hyde and Macbeth are deeply interested in human nature. What is it natural for us to be like? And both of them veer away from a kind of perhaps a more religious dogma of we are all good, or we can be all good, or we should try to be all good, and we have been chosen by a creator that created us who is all good. They seem to be much more rooted in reality, in a dirtier, grubbier, far more interesting reality where human beings are complicated people. And this is a supreme achievement of Shakespeare, if you ask me. He takes, gone is medieval literature with their two-dimensional cardboard cutout kind of characters of the knight in shining armour and the damsel in distress in the tower and the evil villain, ha 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 ha. He shows us that it's much more interesting. Human beings are complicated. We are not 100% good, we're not 100% evil, no one is. And we are mixtures of the two, and that can vary at different points in our life as well, and what brings evil out of us, or what provokes evil or good. Far more interesting than just sort of, here's a good character, here's an evil character. He gives us complicated characters, and he gives us more leaves us with more questions than answers, which is always a good sign of a quality piece of work, I think. So superficiality is there, so is desire. What do we want? And to what extent do we follow our desires, or should we follow our desires? Big part of Jekyll and Hyde, obviously. But as well within Macbeth, that notion of ambition, and it's the ambition that eats him up, that ambition that overruns itself, which overleaps itself. Then ideas around violence and how people use violence to manipulate and to get what they want. And ideas of reputation and what our reputation's really worth. Back to notions of kingship there, or chivalry, or being a gentleman in Victorian society or in Elizabethan Jacobean society.